This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Should Alberta's premier really be sharing a stage with Tucker Carlson? That's exactly what the plan is, coming up on January 24th. And in this episode of Real Talk, we're going to talk to a couple of political watchers, commentators, pundits, if you will, that I don't think we'll see eye to eye on this. Probably just like the general population won't either. I probably don't have to tell you who Tucker Carlson is or what he's all about. He was America's most watched cable TV news personality, with apologies to Sean Hannity. Of course, I guess it mattered week in, week out who the ratings leader was, but there was no question that Carlson's show on Fox News was one of the most important and most watched shows on that network. Up until it wasn't, up until they let him go for seemingly a myriad of offensive comments. Whether or not it was just one moment probably could be debated, but Carlson's on the record saying a number of things, calling America more dirty because of immigrants, suggesting that white supremacy is a hoax, that the January 6th protesters that stormed the Capitol were peaceful folks, tourists, if you will. And the list goes on and on and on. Hell, he suggested that teachers that talk about gender identity in school classrooms should be punched in the face. Alberta's premier says that she's willing to talk to a number of different people. Her office telling reporters that, of course, she doesn't agree with everybody she talks to. So what gives? In just a second, we'll get to Matthew Hayes and Peter McCaffrey. We'll be taking a look at our text line as well, our YouTube live chat, to see where you land on this. And, of course, you can always send us an email, no matter when you're hearing or watching this, to talk@ryanjesperson.com. This episode is happening with the support of Business Career College, and they have one clear message for you today, and that is if you're looking for a rewarding and high-paying career, but you're rolling without a university degree, don't worry about it. You can get started as an insurance professional today with Business Career College. You know, in Canada, it's a great profession. A lot of people are making great salaries. I mean, $90,000 a year after a short time in the industry. All you need to do is take an approved course in life insurance or property and casualty insurance and then pass that licensing exam. Business Career College offers industry-leading approved courses, and their expert instructors are passionate about helping you launch your new career. And there's a great incentive for Real Talkers right now. You can save 15% off any BCC insurance course, any course, with the code REALTALK. That's all one word, the promo code REALTALK, when you get started today at businesscareercollege.com. Matthew Hayes is a Montreal-based writer and professor who once called Alberta home. He teaches courses in media studies at Concordia University and Marianapolis College. He's written about politics for a ton of different publications, including The Guardian, The Globe and Mail, The Washington Post, The New York Times, and Vice. Peter McCaffrey is founder and president of the Alberta Institute. It's an independent policy and think tank that aims to advance personal freedom and choice in the province of Alberta. I want to welcome both of you to the show, and thanks for making time to join us. Peter, why don't we go to you first? Premier Danielle Smith, January 24th, unless something changes, she'll be up on stage with Tucker Carlson. Good move, bad move, indifferent? Where do you stand on it?
Well, I think it's perfectly fine to appear with people you don't always agree with on every issue. I probably don't agree with you on every issue, Ryan, and yet I'm going to be here on your show talking about it. And I think that's totally fine. I think freedom of speech and debate is a core tenet of democracy, and that we should promote and advocate for the free exchange of ideas, not try and censor and limit.
Okay. I mean, I haven't called white supremacy a hoax or called immigrants.
No, of course not. I wasn't making a comparison there. But, you know, the point is we can agree to disagree on different issues and still appear on shows and talk to people who have different opinions. And, you know.
Matthew, where do you stand on this?
Well, Danielle Smith can do whatever she likes. The question really is this a good thing for her to be doing as premier? She's paid by the public purse. She's not just an average individual like the rest of us on the show. She's the premier. She's paid by taxpayer dollars. And for her to be cozying up to somebody like Tucker Carlson, who has you already went through a number of his opinions, discussed some of the things he's discussed. Also, the Great Replacement theory, which is really a dangerous right-wing conspiracy theory, which suggests that Black and brown people are being let into. It started in France. They said it's a French theory that Black and brown people were being let in to replace white people in France. And then Tucker Carlson has applied it to North America, to America, and particularly the United States. Keep in mind, Tucker Carlson was too crazy for Fox, okay? Like, that should really state everything that we need to know about Tucker Carlson. Too insane for Fox. Fox News, just last week, there was somebody on Fox News saying Taylor Swift was programmed by the Pentagon, is actually saying this with a straight face. So this is a really lunatic fringe network. It's not normal. A lot of people watch it. That doesn't make it right. Now, you can say, well, we should just let people enjoy talking to people with different opinions. And I'm, frankly, kind of happy that she's getting on stage, because it just makes her look like more of a buffoon, frankly. But the right really has to ask themselves some questions. And I would ask your guest about this. Are people who hold really strongly strongly felt convictions about white supremacy, is that just part of the normal political discussion we're going to have? Because for a long time, if a politician got up and said something really racist, it disqualified them. And the conservative movement conservative party was often told they were racist, and they really went out of their way to try to say, no, we're not racist. We're not. That's unfair to call us racist just because we're conservative. But if conservatives start saying, well, this is just part of the political discussion, we're just having a simple disagreement with somebody who says the Holocaust didn't happen, or the Great Replacement theory is a believable theory, or immigrants are dirty. I mean, the mayor of Edmonton is an immigrant who was born in India. He's a popular mayor. Does the premier think that this is really a good idea to be referring to the mayor of Edmonton, of our city, it's the city I grew up in, as dirty? I mean, this is kind of appalling. And for people to say, well, this is just a difference of opinion, and she should get up on stage and have a robust exchange of ideas. Is she going to take him on any of this? Or is she going to ask him about any of this and say she disagrees with any of it? I doubt it, but we'll see.
Yeah, Peter, I mean, do we have to draw a line between a difference of opinion on why Alberta's electricity grid was in peril over the weekend, or a difference of opinion on what property tax increases should look like, or carbon pricing, or for that matter, any other issue that we typically see discussed in mainstream politics, and a difference of opinion on whether or not immigrants are dirty, or whether or not white supremacy is a real thing? I mean, it sounds to me like there's got to be a line drawn when you're holding an office, in particular, as prestigious and important and influential as the premier.
Sure, but let's also draw a line between what's factual and what's not, right? So Matthew wrote an article in the Calgary Herald recently talking about this very issue, and he's repeating a lot of the same points on this interview here as well. And I actually went through the article and I looked at what Matthew's claims were, and I researched them, and I figured out, well, is this actually what's been said or what isn't? And the issue is Matthew is conflating a lot of things that have been said by guests on Tucker's show prior to them being guests or after them being guests, versus what was said on Tucker's show versus what was said by Tucker himself. And look, I'm not here to defend every single thing that Tucker said. I agree with free speech, not with every statement by Tucker. But I'll give you an example, right? Matthew started his article saying that the justification Danielle had given for going on Tucker's show was that people in America didn't know how much oil and gas that we have in Alberta. And I actually looked at what Danielle had actually said, and she talked about how there's a real education process needed in the US to talk about the importance of energy security, and about the importance of Keystone XL pipeline, and about all of the great environmental progress that we've made in Alberta with our oil and gas resources. So Matthew dismissed the whole point of going on the show as just, oh, people don't know that we have oil and gas in Alberta, except that's not what was actually said, right? So we have to actually look at what's actually being said, not what's being claimed. And another example, Ryan, you had somebody on a couple of months ago, Gada Sasa,
yeah,
who made some incredibly offensive comments about what had happened in Israel and what Hamas had done, and claiming that, Hamas actually didn't kill any civilians. It was the Israeli Defense Force that killed civilians. I'm not going to then say to you, well, I'm not coming on your show because you once had a guest on your show who said something offensive, right? That wasn't something you said. That was something a guest said on your show. And, I'm not going to start scrutinizing every single statement of every single guest that you've had on your show to determine whether I should interact with you, right? Like that we can't do that in a free society. We have to have open debate and discussion.
Peter, I mean, we've got lots to work with. Stuff coming out of Tucker's own words. I mean, here he is. I mean, this is arguably among probably his most offensive statements on Fox, and this was a while ago. I mean, this Tucker got away with a lot. I mean, this is what happens when you average 3 million viewers a night. This is what happens when you're making millions and millions of dollars for the network. A fantastic salary for himself, by the way, as well, reportedly earning $15 million a year. But I digress. This is one of those statements that Matthew was writing about. This is Tucker Carlson on Fox.
What you never hear anybody do is make the economic case for mass immigration. But as an economic matter, this is insane. It's indefensible, so nobody even tries to defend it. Instead, our leaders demand that you shut up and accept this. We have a moral obligation to admit the world's poor, they tell us, even if it makes our own country poorer and dirtier and more divided.
Okay, so, I mean, there you have it, Tucker in his own words, right? It's not a guest that blindsided him like Gada blindsided us.
So I think that's an offensive
You're also
comment.
saying that he didn't say certain things, that those were just guests that he had on. Yet he frequently had guests on who were actually, if you did even a modicum of research, you'd find they're really quite extreme far-right people. So he was platforming. He was providing a platform for people to say things that are really, really nasty and helping to elevate them on their own books, their own articles, their own views. He's really advocated for white supremacy. Again, he was too crazy for Fox. I mean, they got rid of him because of that Dominion lawsuit and because of the embarrassing text messages between him and other Fox News personalities, in which it was clear they were lying through their teeth about almost everything, that they didn't believe any of the guests they had on. They were platforming people who were serial liars, and they had no problem with it. They were joking about it behind everyone's back. I mean, it's pathetic. It's not really a news network. It's also worth pointing out that in 2018, when Fox News was in a lawsuit, their own lawyer, Tucker Carlson and Fox News' own lawyer, said he's not a journalist, so you can't really take what he said seriously. He's an entertainer. So, I mean, to say, oh, he's just, Danielle Smith is just going to talk to another journalist, well, he's not even a journalist. He's just, at this point, he's sort of an activist clown, I would call him. Also, Danielle Smith, I would make the argument she's being played. I mean, he's on his way out. He no longer has the Fox News platform. He's on X, formerly known as Twitter, the dumpster fire that has become X. He's not, he's losing audience. I mean, who remembers who Bill O'Reilly was? Bill who? I mean, once you don't have the platform anymore, you're losing stature and audience. So he's losing his numbers. He's doing this to get a little bit of publicity and to have Danielle Smith on. So I don't even think this is going to help her at all. I think this is going to backfire. There's a lot of immigrants in Alberta, and people have a right. I'm an immigrant myself. My parents emigrated to Canada when I was a child. We have every right to be a little offended that someone's referring to immigrants as dirty. Of course, they wouldn't refer to my family that way because we immigrated from Britain and we're white. But, you know, I have neighbors and friends who come from other parts of the world, and calling immigrants dirty is offensive. And yeah, that should be a disqualifying thing. Conservatives are going to say this is just another opinion someone happens to hold. I mean, that's really awful.
Matthew, you argue, and go ahead, Peter.
No, that's not what I'm going to say. What I'm going to say is I'm also an immigrant, and I do agree that that's an offensive comment that he made. But that doesn't mean that ignoring and avoiding and deplatforming people is the best way to address this. I immigrated to Canada. As you say, I'm also white. But you know what? I would happily go on Tucker Carlson's show and argue against him. And I would be happy to make the economic case for why immigration is a good thing and why it improves our country, right? That is the way that we have a debate over ideas. That is the way that we persuade people and we change minds, not by being closed and shutting down. And that's how we protect our liberal democracy, is by having open debates, not by deplatforming and shunning and hiding and pushing into the shadows where these things actually get worse.
I'm not asking anyone to deplatform anyone. I mean, where do you? Okay, so let's the whole notion of deplatforming or whatever. Tucker Carlson was fired by Fox, right? Should Ryan next week have flat earthers on? People who believe the Earth is flat. I mean, why not? I mean,
he had somebody on who denied Hamas's attacks in Israel.
Yeah. Let me hop in here for a second. And by the way, I love this fulsome, robust debate. This is exactly what this show is for, and I appreciate both of you doing this. If you're just tuning in on the live stream and Mixlr audio app presented by California Closets, we're talking to Matthew Hayes and Peter McCaffrey. January 24th is the day that Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, is set to take a stage with Tucker Carlson, plus Conrad Black, Rex Murphy. It's kind of like the who's who of Canadian right-wingers in a way. It's at Rogers Place, by the way. It's not at Kathy's Coffee Shop either. They're going to be selling thousands of tickets to this. Peter, I don't mind you bringing up the Gattasass interview. It's fair game. Any interview that we've done on this show is fair game. I don't know if this is relevant. In my world, it certainly is. But we didn't book her to come on and make the point that IDF soldiers were killing Israelis at the music festival. I didn't know she was going to say that, and if she had been tweeting that, I wouldn't have invited her on the show. There's things that happen in a live broadcast that are on the record, and there you go. Can we acknowledge that in so many ways as this might help sell tickets for Tucker Carlson in Alberta, though I'm not convinced he needs the help. I think if anywhere in Canada is going to sell an arena for Tucker Carlson, it's in Alberta or maybe Saskatchewan. But it's also beneficial for Danielle Smith, right? Like if you look at how she won the leadership of the UCP, if you look at how she absolutely dominated in a lot of the rural ridings, I mean, the Venn diagram of people who supported her leadership and people who watch or listen to Tucker Carlson, it's probably just a perfect circle, right? So she stands to benefit from this as well, Peter. The question is, does it hurt or harm her reputation? Strategically, is it smart or stupid?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, you could argue that we're promoting the event just by having this discussion.
Sure.
That your show is now promoting the event, right? And of course, I was not implying that you necessarily knew what that guest would have said about Hamas and about the civilians, right? But others would argue that now that you've done that, it doesn't matter that you didn't, research enough what their views were and what that organization's perspective was, that you should just be cancelled, even though it wasn't your fault, right? Guest said something offensive, bam, you're done. That's it. You're not allowed to be part of the mainstream discussion anymore. But my point is that should not be the bar. The bar should be the ideas that we're debating and the advocacy of a free and open liberal society, not the specific, 2-sentence thing that somebody said once on a show, right?
I'll take your point, Peter, but I don't want us to get distracted and to give Tucker
with Tucker Carlson.
I don't want to give Tucker.
That's ridiculous.
I don't want to give Tucker a pass here on implying or suggesting that these are all things his guests have said. I mean, like Tucker.
No, and I said before, he said some offensive things
lots
as well.
Lots of stuff. I mean,
plenty of stuff that I disagree with. Well, exactly, and I would go on his show and debate those things and argue against him. Who's
been suggesting that he be canceled? Because I've never suggested that he be canceled.
There's a petition running right now to have Immigration Canada block him from being able to enter the country.
No,
and that is a thing that has happened in the past.
I just want to say I disagree with that. If he wants to come and talk, he can. That's his business, and I don't really ever believe in shutting down speech. And Noam Chomsky and Robert Fisk will back me up. I've said repeatedly, don't shut down speech. When Netanyahu was shut down at Concordia, I thought it was a big mistake. And I said so at the time, many years ago, when he was not prime minister, in between his stints as prime minister. So I don't agree with shutting down speech. I agree with that. I think that what Danielle Smith has done, though, is dangerous for herself, for her own political brand, because she was really labeled both very right-wing, kind of kooky, and also people felt like she was a bit of an idiot. That's what people were saying about her. Sorry, my phone's going. And I think that this damages her brand. This makes her look like she's not really thinking things through. I think she's being played here a little bit. to appear on this stage. It would have been dead easy for her people to simply say, thank you for the invite, but she's premier of the province. She's extremely busy right now and she can't make the appearance. That would have been very easy for her to do. This now attaches her to Tucker Carlson and his many of his outrageous views, not just his guests. We're not just saying some things he said. He's repeatedly said a lot of offensive things. As I said, too crazy for Fox News. Rupert Murdoch apparently did not like the man. I think the federal Tories have got to be looking at this with a little bit of angst. Pierre Poilievre has been going out of his way to soften his image. He had that makeover. By the way, it was a terrible makeover. I hope they didn't pay him, anyone who did it, too much. They just took off his glasses, and it really does look like Milhouse with his glasses off rather than on.
I thought it worked, Matthew. I think it worked.
It may have worked, but it didn't work for me. But anyways, they're trying to soften his image. They're trotting out his immigrant wife, an immigrant success story. They're not trotting out his gay father, but we know he has a gay father. They're trying to soften his image. For a long time, the charge against conservative parties in this country was that they were racist. The Reform Party, which I covered in the early 90s when I was a student journalist, and I was at the U of A, and I went and interviewed Deborah Gray. She was the first MP for the Reform Party. I went to some of their rallies. It wasn't unusual to hear a real trashing of immigrants. Preston Manning even said, it makes sense to favor immigration from Europe over other parts of the world because they will integrate into and assimilate into Canadian society more easily than people from other parts of the world. So a lot of people said, wow, this sounds really racist. You're saying white people, people of European background should be favored in immigration policy. Now, I have to say, I have to give props to Stephen Harper here. Surprise, surprise. I never voted for the man, but I wrote about this in the Washington Post, I think it was in 2016, that he and his team went out to minority communities, non-white communities, and said, and their internal discussion about this was, we have got to break the lockhole that the Liberal Party has on multiculturalism. We have to reach out to immigrant communities, in particular around social issues, because some immigrants were uncomfortable with, for example, same-sex marriage, which the Liberal government had embraced. And he went out to, in particular, to the Chinese community, to the Indo-Canadian community, and said, your values are our values. And he was very effective in doing this. It was a very good political strategy for the Conservative Party of Canada to do. And it worked. They got a lot of non-white people voting for them. And they, for a while anyway, took the mantle of multiculturalism away. It really had been held quite exclusively by the Liberal Party since Trudeau was the one, Pierre Elliott Trudeau was to make it official government policy in the early 70s. A lot of immigrants felt very beholden to Trudeau for that. Meeting with somebody like Tucker Carlson really threatens a lot of that, because what it does is it says that for people who don't like the Conservatives can say, well, there you are. Now we see you for what you really are. In your grubby little heart, you're embracing white supremacy. And that's not just another viewpoint. That's not like saying we want smaller government, lower taxes, we want less regulation. Those things I can handle, right? But when you're talking about the Great Replacement theory, and when you're calling immigrants dirty, you've crossed a line. And Tucker Carlson has done that numerous times. It's not just a few of his guests. He's talked about these things as if they're real. He's provided a platform to all and any manner of racist nut jobs and said, oh, this is all just about free speech and open discussion. And so it would have been dead easy for her to simply say, sorry, I'm too busy, which is a very valid excuse. She's a premier of a province, for God's sake. And none of this BS about, well, we're going to tell Americans about oil and gas and how great we are in Alberta. It's a ridiculous excuse. She's probably reaching people. If she's reaching Tucker Carlson's audience, it's not like she's going to convert anyone anyway. I think this is a terrible decision on her part.
Hang on, Peter. I want to circle back to a point that Matthew made on whether or not this is a liability, whether or not this is a tough pill to swallow for Pierre Poilievre, for conservatives in Canada, generally speaking. That in just 60 seconds. We're talking to Peter McCaffrey, who's founder of the Alberta Institute, Matthew Hayes, a journalism instructor, a pundit, journalist, and author. This episode is happening with the support of our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy. A lot of talk about renewables right now, and for good reason. In these frigid temperatures, Alberta's electricity grid in peril. People have been talking about solar and wind and how it fits in. And, well, you're probably seeing a lot of testimonials from people on the personal side talking about how their systems held up through winter conditions. What you've heard may not be accurate. If you're looking for credible information on the advent of solar, advances in solar across the country, including technology and affordability, I encourage you to check out Kuby Energy's Instagram account. That's Kuby, Kuby Energy on Instagram. They're hiring, by the way, as well. You can check out the careers link at kubyenergy.ca. Grand Dog Essentials wants to remind you that while the name suggests that they're Alberta's go-to for quality raw food for dogs, and that's true, they've also got lots going on for cats as well. Plus, for the month of January, their 4-leaf rover and Adored Beast probiotics are 10% off. You don't even need a discount code. You just add them to your cart and save. And there's options there for, again, dogs and cats. Feeding a fresh food diet is a really important piece of the puzzle when you're creating a healthy gut environment for your beloved pets. The second important aspect is building a supply of good bacteria with probiotics. You can learn more by checking out the blog at granddog.ca. They'll deliver to your door in Calgary, Edmonton, and Central Alberta. Don't forget, the promo code REALTALK takes 10% off your first-time order. And from food for our beloved four-legged family members to our humans in the house, Friesen Brothers, with 16 locations across the province of Alberta, still family-owned, wants to let you know about a couple of the great things they've got going on this month. Don't forget, as the weather gets colder, Friesen Brothers, and if you check out their website, friesen.com, Freson.com, and invites you to indulge in comfort food through the month of January. You'll find a recipe page on the website with a whole bunch of great comfort food ideas. They're easy to follow. They showcase the finest ingredients from your local Friesen Brothers store, from stews to slow cooker recipes. I'm looking at that shepherd's pie. You'll find a lot of information at friesen.com/what's for dinner. They've even got videos there. You can follow along and make your cooking even easier. Friesen Brothers is Alberta grown and Alberta owned. Back to Peter McCaffrey and Matthew Hayes in just a moment. For those of you that have never heard Tucker Carlson's show, I doubt you've never heard of him. But if you weren't tuning into Fox News, you may have missed takes like this one on vaccines.
The point of mandatory vaccination is to identify the sincere Christians in the ranks, the free thinkers, the men with high testosterone levels, and anyone else who does not love Joe Biden, and make them leave immediately. It's a takeover of the U.S. military. Here's how they're doing it. This show has just obtained a PowerPoint that the Army is using to justify mandatory vaccines to the troops. This is an actual slide from it on your screen. You will notice there the sympathetic portrayal of Satanism. How many children were sacrificed to Satan because of the vaccine? The slide reads, apparently sarcastically. Then the presentation proceeds to list the so-called tenets of Satanism, which are taken straight from the Temple of Satanism website. So here you have the United States Army doing PR for Satanism.
Okay, obviously ludicrous. So, Peter, the point that Matthew was making before we took our quick break was that this appearance of Alberta's premier on stage with Tucker Carlson could be a real liability for conservatives across the country, including the federal leader, Pierre Poilievre. Do you buy it or not?
Well, the point he was actually making is a pretty blithe point that a whole bunch of conservative politicians are white supremacists, which, like, I don't think anybody on either side of the political spectrum at the legislature would accuse Danielle Smith of being a white supremacist, right? But then he very neatly converted that to, oh, and appearing on Tucker Carlson is proof that all these accusations that I've been throwing around is correct, right? So it's kind of a
no, I didn't say that.
self-fulfilling
I didn't
fallacy,
say that.
right?
I didn't say that. No, I did not say that. I said
you're doing it by association.
She's got to be worried about. Don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say that. I said there's a perception, and people on the left who critical.
You're the one that's claiming that perception, and so it's a self-fulfilling fallacy that you and a whole bunch of people claim that all these people are racist.
She has to be concerned.
And therefore, anything that they do
concerned about
proof,
how that's
right?
going to play in the public eye, and that's what I'm suggesting.
Right,
that
but it's a self-fulfilling fallacy.
Easy target. No, it makes her an easy target. I'm talking about how, if this is good
it
for.
Makes an easy target.
If this is good for, this is bad for her, and I'm saying it's bad.
Okay. Let's Peter, go ahead and finish your point.
No, it makes her an easy target for the false claims that yourself and other people like you are throwing out. So it's a self-fulfilling fallacy. Danielle Smith is not a white supremacist. It's ridiculous to claim so. And appearing on a show with Tucker Carlson does not automatically confirm your bias, right? Like, I'm interested, Ryan. Would you go on Tucker Carlson's show? Would you have him on your show? Even if you would, I wouldn't suggest that you appearing on a show would make you a white supremacist.
He's not the premier of the province.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, Peter, I would 100% go on Tucker's show, and I would 100% have Tucker on my show. But I expect that I would be held to a high standard in interviewing him. We would pull the same clips that we're playing in this show, and I would ask him exactly what he's talking about, and I would have well-founded positions. I'd do more research for that interview than I did since I interviewed Jason Kenney back in the day. I mean, people in the live chat right now are talking about heat that I've taken for interviews. I mean, people get pissed off at me for interviewing the Premier, Danielle Smith, in this studio, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But let me give you some fodder. Let me give you some fuel, and I'll put it to both of you. And I'll ask you if you think it was a bad idea when I welcomed to the show the founder of Take Back Alberta, David Parker. It was the most downloaded episode of Real Talk in 2023. Like, should I have platformed David Parker? Does David Parker already have a platform? Is it better to shine sunlight into these corners so people better understand what the founder and the movement is all about? I argue yes, which is why we brought him on. But Peter, obviously, we faced a lot of flack for that.
Yeah, but I agree. I think free, open debate of policy issues is fundamental to protect democracy. And that's what we're talking about here.
Matthew?
I'm glad that we're in agreement that appearing on a show with somebody does not mean you agree with all of their views.
But Matthew's also making a fair point that I'm not the premier of Alberta, right? I'm an entrepreneur, man. I'm a talk show host. The more clicks, the more views, the more exposure, the better for me. That's just the facts. Matthew, over to you.
Well, what you raise is a really important question, and I think it is a problematic question facing journalists right now. Is when you provide someone with a forum and when you don't. I caught part of that episode, and I think that you did a really good job as you did your duty as a journalist. I've interviewed lots of people I disagree with. I interviewed Jim Keekstra and Eric Zundel, who are both Holocaust deniers. I've interviewed people, Luca Magnotta in prison. I've interviewed a lot of people who I completely disagree with and I find unsavory as a journalist. The problem with Tucker Carlson is, as I said, he's not, his own lawyer said he's not a journalist. He's more of an activist clown, I would argue. He's somebody who's actually promoting a lot of these ideas he's having on his show. So Danielle Smith isn't really going on there to talk about tourism or oil and gas. That's sort of like nonsensical. She's going on there because she knows that some of her base likes him and appreciates his message. The symbolic weight of doing that, I think, is going to hurt her. I think it's problematic. He's not a journalist. It's a different thing. He's something else. And to say, well, I wanted to go and reach his audience, I don't think that really cuts it. I think this is a foolish move on her part. Some people will appreciate, some people will like it, but she's got to prove that she's not a lot of the things that people said that she was. And she's stepping right into it. This guy is an extremist, as I said, too extreme for Fox News. That should say it all.
I appreciate that both of you have come on here and exchanged these ideas. I also want to acknowledge that we've gone past the amount of time that we asked you to stay for. So I want to kind of move to the closing remarks, so to speak. Here's your chance to put something out there for the audience to consider that maybe we haven't touched on yet. Peter, I'll come to you in the form of a question because I do think it's an important point, and that is that audiences expect pushback. Like even Danielle Smith's supporters. I mean, except for the ones that'll kind of tolerate anything. I'm not talking about the unconditional, partisan, unflappable type supporters. But I'm talking about the average, reasonable, respectable Albertan that says, you know what? I am going to go hear Tucker Carlson speak. They probably went and saw Jordan Peterson speak as well. They're not afraid to hear the ideas. They'll listen to some podcasts that their friends think they're crazy or in poor taste listening to. But they're still going to expect her to push back if he says something outrageous. Can we acknowledge that there will be an onus on Alberta's premier to represent the province up there on stage and push back if the situation calls for it? Would you agree on that?
Sure, but the show hasn't even happened yet, right? We've had all this crazy vitriolic claims about all these offensive things that have been said. The show hasn't even happened. I go watch the show and let's see what the discussion about it, and let's see what the policy discussion.
Well, we already know who Tucker Carlson is. We've already heard Tucker Carlson speak on all of these issues, so it's like ridiculous to say, well, we haven't seen the show yet.
So are you trying to shut him down, or are you not? You've kind of backtracked. You've gone from saying it's terrible.
I'm not trying to shut him down. I've said repeatedly, I'm not trying to shut him down. I'm saying we know what he's about, and I said I think it's a mistake of Danielle Smith to meet with
You're
her.
not trying to shut him down, but you think he's a racist. You think anybody who goes on his show is a racist.
No, I didn't say that. Don't put words in my mouth. The Ku Klux Klan has some popular podcasts. Should Danielle Smith go on and speak to the Klan and go on their show and say, well, I wanted to talk up oil and gas in Alberta? Should she?
No, of course not.
Okay, well, so then now you're shutting down speech. Now you're canceling. Now you're saying you shouldn't go and hobnob with the Klan, right? Now, so I thought you were for open and free discussion.
Yeah, you're backtracking throughout this debate, right? You started out like in your article in the Calgary Herald talks about how it's so problematic to do this, and now you're trying to claim, oh well, no, I'm not shutting down free speech. I'm
not shutting down free speech.
I'm just giving political advice to the premier, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, that's a completely different debate. That's not what your article.
I raised some questions. I raised some. Did you read the piece in the Herald? I raised some questions. I think those are fair questions to ask.
I mean,
as an immigrant to Alberta, as someone who knows many immigrants to Alberta and to Canada, and I live in a province right now, Quebec, where immigrants are repeatedly under attack by another right-wing government, which has got to worry Poilievre as well, because
there it is again. Immigrants are under attack.
Hugely unpopular. The CAQ is hugely unpopular, and they're attacking immigrants repeatedly. And then you've got Doug Ford, which is under
hang on.
Now. So now you've got like
immigrants.
What?
Who's attacking immigrants?
The CAQ is.
Okay.
In Quebec, the leaders in Quebec. So okay. I'm saying immigrants are under attack in parts of Canada. So you're going and you're going to be on the show of somebody who's not a journalist, who's basically an activist, who's already got a declining audience. You're getting on stage with him. You're getting on stage with him, and I don't think it's a politically savvy move on her part. I just don't.
Peter,
she can do it if she wants. She can do whatever she wants, my friend. She can do whatever the hell she wants. But I'm saying it's a bad move on her part.
Peter, what's something you want the audience to walk with and consider as we prepare to wrap up the conversation for now? What's your closing argument, so to speak?
Look, I think Matthew started with a very broad argument in his Calgary Herald article and at the start of the show. And then as I pointed out that many of the claims in that article aren't correct, the justification that he claimed that Danielle had given for the interview is not actually the justification that she gave for the interview, and that he conflated a bunch of arguments. He's backtracked and backtracked and backtracked. Now it's like, oh, well, no, I don't actually think it's bad. I don't actually want to shut him down. It's purely strategic advice.
I never said he should be shut down. You're putting words in my mouth. I never said, when did I ever say in that article or anywhere else that Tucker Carlson should be shut down? I never said that.
Okay, Peter, finish your thought.
Look, I think we have a ton of people. I don't have the quote in front of me, but we have a ton of people saying that Tucker Carlson shouldn't be allowed in the country. We have other people saying that the event shouldn't go ahead. We have other people saying that it's terrible that the premier is participating. We have the NDP fundraising off the existence of the event, right, claiming that this shouldn't happen. The event hasn't even happened yet. People should go and watch the event. They should participate in free speech and open debate and all of the core tenets we have of a liberal, open democracy. And feel free to agree or disagree with the content of the event, as opposed to the people involved and the claims about what those people have said previously and the associations they have and things that guests on their show have said and things like that. Okay. We live in a free society. Let's judge people based on ideas and the things that they say, and let's see what happens at the event. I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, but I think people are judging Tucker Carlson on his ideas and things that he said, and that's why I think people suggest.
Yeah. But again, there's been a big conflation during the show about what was actually said by Tucker Carlson versus what was said by guests on his show.
Oh, Peter, I'm playing
what was said by guests
prior to
him being on the show.
I'm playing the clips.
In his own words. We saw clips of him in his own words saying ridiculous things.
Yeah, and I disagree with those things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're running around chasing our tail here. Matthew, final statement, something you've not yet said that you think is important for the audience to consider as they make up their minds on this one.
Not much more to say. I mean, I've said most of what I wanted to say. I think that Stephen Harper really helped the party to evolve in I think, a good direction when he put the issue of same-sex marriage behind the Conservatives, put it to a vote, knowing they would lose, and also embracing immigration and embracing immigrants and making the party look like it wasn't just about white people. And I think that, Danielle Smith could easily have just said, sorry, I'm really busy. I can't make this event. I'm premier of the province. And she has to think about the fact that she represents all Albertans, and many people in Alberta are immigrants or children of immigrants. The mayor of Edmonton is immigrant. Mayor Nenshi was a child of immigrants, the first Muslim mayor. We should be proud of the diversity we have in Alberta. Free speech advocates go on and on about free speech. I don't hear them talking much about all the book banning that's going on in Texas and Florida. The cancel culture only applies to the left, it seems.
Happy to denounce
I am not arguing. I certainly hear you when you talk about these petitions. I would not sign that petition to shut Tucker Carlson down.
Me neither.
I wouldn't. I'm not going to shell out. I mean, people are stupid to go shell out. Go and shell out. Give him your money if you want. I wouldn't do that myself, but I'm not. To be clear, I am with your guest on the right that I don't think you should shut down speech. I really don't. I think that's important. I think, in America, of course, the First Amendment pretty much guarantees any kind of speech. I think in Canada, we've got it down a little bit better. If you are promoting hatred against an identifiable group of people, I think that's where it becomes really problematic. And some would say, from some of the clips you've shown, Tucker has crossed that line. But again, I would not advocate shutting him down. That is something I don't really believe in.
We had a scenario in Edmonton years ago, and I remember this because I had an interview lined up with Jordan Peterson, and it wasn't before Jordan Peterson was Jordan Peterson, but it was kind of right at the beginning of his ascent. And people will probably remember this. I don't know if you two remember this, but the Citadel Theater in downtown Edmonton had Jordan Peterson booked. And then when it was announced and there was public outcry, the board decided to cancel the event, to deny him access to that conference room, to that room. He canceled his trip to Edmonton. He canceled his appearance on my show, which I was obviously pissed about. But I thought the whole thing was a mistake, especially for a theater, especially for an arts company that'll put all kinds of stuff, scripted stuff on stage, but they wouldn't allow Jordan Peterson to come and share his ideas. And I thought that was a real mistake. And if I'm picking up correctly on both of your body language, for the benefit of people listening on the podcast, it seems like both of you agree with me on that.
Yeah.
Peter,
yeah, I think private organizations should have a right to reject to host events if they want to, but also it gets into really gray, tricky areas when some of those entities are actually nonprofits funded by the government, and part of their mandate is to promote ideas and free speech and things like that. I don't know. It seems like I wasn't necessarily expecting this when we started the interview, but it seems like maybe we can agree on the old Noam Chomsky quote of like, if you're really in favor of free speech, then you're in favor of freedom of speech for precisely the views you despise. Otherwise, you're not in favor of free speech, right? I'm not saying anybody should be forced to go and watch the Tucker Carlson event. I'm just saying they shouldn't not be allowed to. And I'm just saying that free and open debate is an important part of society. And I'm intrigued by what will happen at the event. And I think it'll be an interesting event.
That's Peter McCaffrey. Peter is the founder and president of the Alberta Institute. You can learn more about what they do in advocacy and otherwise by checking out albertainstitute.ca. And you can read Matthew Hayes' piece at calgaryherald.com, an opinion piece published January 6th. Isn't that interesting? Should Smith be elevating an American brand of misinformation? My thanks to Matthew Hayes and to Peter McCaffrey for joining us on the spirited issue this episode of Real Talk. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Really appreciate that.
Whew.
Wow. That was some real talk.
Well, I like to see it. I think some of this got lost, but this is exactly why people like Tucker Carlson fire people up on both sides, right? But I think the main point here is, like, yes, I think Tucker should come to the country. I think he should say whatever the heck he wants. If you want to pay him money to say it, go ahead.
Lots of money to say it.
I just don't think political leaders should be sitting there, because the word debate came up a lot in this interview, this double interview right here. It's going to be a debate. It's not going to be a debate. It's going to be a lot of glad handing, back patting.
Totally.
Like, this isn't going to be, he's not going to challenge her. He's going to compliment her, and she's going to smile, and that's what it's going to be.
Well, they'll have some stuff locked and loaded, and obviously he'll probably tee up, as would any good interviewer. He'll probably talk about what happened with the grid, which will transition nicely into oil and gas. I mean, Johnny, I'm kind of flipping you around here because I'll get to that January 6th clip in a minute, but can you load the O Canada one for me?
Sure.
I think a lot of people are familiar with this as well. I mean, Tucker Carlson, I mean, whether or not this is tongue in cheek, and like we can take a joke and not everything is super duper serious. Some of the stuff Tucker says is deadly serious. And some of the stuff is obviously farcical. He's doing it for the clips. He's doing it to make people smirk, talking about Justin Trudeau as a dictator, talking about Justin Trudeau as a communist. Whether or not you're a liberal or conservative or NDP supporter, if you have half a brain, you know that Justin Trudeau's not a fascist dictator, not a communist, but hey, still, though, here was Tucker Carlson. This is less than a year old.
For more than 100 years, the United States has, as a matter of official policy, opposed dictatorships around the world. But what if tyranny arrived right next door? What would that look like? And what would our government do in response? Would we liberate the people living under authoritarian rule as we have around the world? That is the topic of our upcoming Tucker Carlson Originals documentary, O Canada.
Okay, and then it goes on, and if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see goes on to quote great American presidents, JFK talking about dictators, and George W. Bush talking about dictators, and Barack Obama talking about dictators, and it goes back to file footage of the Americans, invading Iraq, obviously based on what was happening in Kuwait, and you get the idea, sort of including Canada in this conversation. I mean, it's outrageous, right? But it's intended to be outrageous.
Of course
it is. That's he's crazy like a fox, no pun intended.
But he's very smart too. I mean, he's been doing this for years, and he's not a journalist. Neither are we. But he's an entertainer.
Yeah.
He's figured out a way to push people's buttons and make millions of dollars. Man, way to go, Tucker. You juked the system. I'm fucking jealous of this guy. He's a millionaire for saying crazy things and getting a bunch of clicks.
He's a 100 millionaire.
But that doesn't mean anything he says has any truth to it.
I appreciate this comment from Erin in our YouTube live chat. She says, I disagree with Tucker Carlson. I think he is a scourge on society. And when we learned that he was coming to Alberta, we bought tickets immediately. She says he's a fascinating character. Not only did we buy tickets for ourselves, but we bought extra tickets and invited friends, people who also dislike him. So, Aaron, I mean, people may have their own opinions on whether or not, you should. First of all, it's your hard-earned money. You can do whatever the hell you want with it. You go, girl. But you also know that some people would say, well, yeah, I understand your curiosity. I understand that he's a fascinating character, and there's no doubt about that. But you're padding his pockets. You're benefiting him by attending. You can decide whether or not you want to go there. I mean, I am interested in going. I mean, I've been offered tickets. I haven't made up my mind yet. I don't know if I'm going to go.
We'll be
just
there.
Because you attend an event doesn't mean you support the person.
No.
However, if this event devolves
Yeah.
into something crazy, like let's say Rex Murphy.
I was just thinking
I
that.
used to be Rex Murphy's biggest fan. I adored Rex Murphy. One of my favorite interviews of all time when I was working in TV was sitting down one-on-one with Rex Murphy.
Used to love him as well.
When he released that book, Canada and Other Matters of Opinion. I thought that was one of the best names for a book ever. But Rex has really kind of gone in a weird and troubling direction. So let's say that Rex Murphy throws something out there. Something about old stock Canadians or something about immigration. And let's say that Tucker Carlson sort of hooks his claws into that and starts going at it. And let's say it puts the premier in a really awkward position.
Of course.
And let's say thousands of people are applauding and cheering it in Rogers Place. And let's say it kind of turns into a situation.
And he's dissing the country.
That's a really tough look, or dissing immigrants to the country, or dissing visible minorities, or dissing the LGBTQ2S plus community, or dissing any of the other communities that he's dissed over the years. This could be the question is not, is Danielle Smith able to decide whether or not she wants to go there? She can do like Matthew said, whatever the hell she wants.
Yeah.
The question is it politically smart or is it politically stupid?
It's a gamble. And this is why I don't understand people on the left saying, like, this petition, 3,000 signatures, don't come into the country. I mean, it's ridiculous.
That's based, by the way, just quick sentence on
ahead.
his support for Putin.
Yeah.
That's what they're
but
hooking
like
into there.
these little petitions are everywhere for everything. They don't mean shit. But what I'm saying is Danielle is rolling some dice here if she gets in a situation like that. But if you're on the left and you don't like Danielle Smith, let her go into this firestorm. See what happens. I mean, like you're saying, it could be totally – there's a very high chance that this could be very bad for her, like our guest said, Matthew said today. So why not? Let it happen. And like you just said, we probably will end up there, but it's all entertainment. This man is not a journalist. He's not a politician.
Yeah.
He's none of those things. But should Danielle Smith be there? I personally don't think so. I don't think you should sit there with someone who is clearly like juking people and poking the bear when you're supposed to be a premier for everyone in the province, right?
We reference. Can you give me that January 6th clip?
But man, will it be entertaining?
We reference, of course, it'll be entertaining.
It'll be so funny.
I mean, there's a reason why.
Like I'll just laugh at him. I'd be
There's
like,
a
this
reason
guy
why
is crazy.
the guy drew an audience of 3 million viewers a
of
night.
course,
Like
'cause
that
he's
is
nuts.
you got to wrap your mind around that, right? Like drawing an audience of 3 million a night. So the January 6th clip coming up here, Johnny, in just a quick second. We got that ready to rock.
Got
I mean, you know, we've got here a point from, and I hadn't mentioned this guy's name yet, but I will at least once for purposes of accuracy. I think it was Kimberly that said, and keep in mind that W. Brett Wilson is hosting the whole thing, which is just the cherry on top. I mean, Brett Wilson is the guy that's called for Justin Trudeau to be hung for treason. I mean, this guy is one of Calgary's most prominent entrepreneurs and philanthropists. You know all of this. He's part owner of the NHL's Nashville Predators, and he's literally called for the Prime Minister to be hung. So he's going to be hosting this whole thing. I did see some questions in the text line, and I wanted to answer a couple of quick questions as far as I know. So somebody was asking, is this a UCP fundraiser? It is not. The event is being put on by TC Events, which is Tucker Carlson Events. This is a private company, obviously, that's coming in. This is an entrepreneurial venture. This is a for-profit venture. Others have asked, is Danielle Smith getting paid to do this? I can't say either way. I don't know. My suspicion is no, but I can guarantee you that Conrad Black and Rex Murphy are being paid, and I would imagine that W. Brett Wilson may be paying to be a part of this. I can guarantee he would not be paid an appearance fee. I referenced I don't know if it's irony or not, but it's certainly noteworthy that Matthew Hayes' piece in the Calgary Herald about Danielle Smith, the one that we referenced and showed you earlier, should Smith elevate that American brand of misinformation, was published on January 6th. Isn't that interesting? 3 years to the date of that assault on the U.S. Capitol. This is what Tucker Carlson had to say about the Americans that participated in one of the worst acts that we've ever seen to occur against democracy on American soil. Here's Tucker Carlson.
The crowd was enormous. A small percentage of them were hooligans. They committed vandalism. You've seen their pictures again and again. But the overwhelming majority weren't. They were peaceful. They were orderly and meek. These were not insurrectionists. They were sightseers. Footage from inside the Capitol overturns the story you've heard about January 6th. Protesters queue up in neat little lines. They give each other tours outside the Speaker's office. They take cheerful selfies and they smile. They're not destroying the Capitol. They obviously revere the Capitol. They're there because they believe the election was stolen from them. They believe in the system. Here's the man you've heard referred to as the QAnon shaman outside the Senate chamber. These are not rioters. These are people who wandered over from a political rally.
They revere the Capitol, he argues. So,
like, this is just, he's a storyteller. Like, this is, I mean, we all saw the videos. Like, somebody died there. Like, Tucker, this wasn't people coming for a sightseeing
attack
tour.
on American democracy. People are going to be doing
yeah.
decades in prison for what happened that day.
He's an entertainer. He's a bear poker. He became a millionaire from it, which is why he continues to do it. And you know, it is what it is. But should Danielle Smith be sitting there and nodding and smiling? Hey, go ahead. I can't wait to see the clips.
Well,
we're gonna have a whole show on it.
So here's an interesting question to make us all think. By the way, I saw a viewer by the name of Garth. I sure appreciate him chiming in. He says, "Well, it's during our panel discussion here, you might call it a debate." Garth says, "Well, I guess Ryan's obviously got his mind made up on this." I don't think that's the vibe I was giving off at all. I mean, as a matter of fact, like I may very well be at the event, and so I'm curious to hear what he has to say. I'm fascinated by his reach and his voice, and I think that I've approached this from an open-minded and objective perspective. Now, if I was advising Alberta's premier, my advice would be, don't do this. It's not worth it. But I 100% understand why she's doing it, right? And there's a difference. But here's the question. We hold Danielle Smith to a different standard, to a higher standard.
That's the main point.
Because she's the premier.
Yeah.
Because she is representing the office. Because she is there representing Albertans. The Albertans that elected her and the Albertans that didn't. But does it make Aaron in the live chat and you and me hypocrites if we take the position that Danielle Smith should not be on stage, but hell yeah, we're going to be in the audience listening and seeing how this all plays out?
No, it's I just don't want my leader, no matter who they are, and Danielle Smith is the leader of our province. She's your premier, whether you like her or not. I don't want her sitting. I don't want her on either side of the aisle for extremists who clearly are. And again, I hate saying that because it makes it seem like Tucker is up there and he's some genius who is spouting, this political stance that has some backing behind it. It doesn't. He's an entertainer. He's there to get people riled up. That's why he wants Danielle there as well, to get everyone riled up, to get a good clip. And you just shouldn't be there as a premier. If she was running for premier, heck yeah, go out there. But you're in the office now. You represent everybody. You represent everyone.
I think if she's running for premier, I don't think she does it at all.
I'm saying she probably wouldn't, but that's the time when you do it, when you're not sitting in the big chair. Now you're in the big chair. I mean, you got to represent the person who hates you and the person who likes you. And sitting down with Tucker, I think it's going to be bad. Like you said, he's going to say something that is just going to shit on Canada.
Give the people
and
what they want.
She's going to have to either stand up and say something,
but I think the opposite of you. I think that if she was trying to, you keep in mind, I mean, when we were doing our sort of like year-end episodes, remember, and we were talking to Dave Cornwallier and Darren Billis and our group chat roundtable and all those other really fun episodes that we did near the end of December, and they'll age well. If you didn't catch them, you should go check them out. But we started asking about what was the political story of the year? What was the political performance of the year? And you'll remember several people said Danielle Smith coming across as, to quote Ralph Klein, severely normal through the campaign, through the election campaign. So if you're campaigning to be premier, there's no way you go on stage with Tucker Carlson. If you are the premier with a mandate for the next 4 years, lots of runway, people have short memories. Danielle Smith herself, a former broadcaster, she's probably going to get a real kick out of hobnobbing with and sharing a few backstage cocktails with Tucker Carlson, 100%. Of course. Then I can understand why she's going to do it. You can let us know what you think about all this to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I saw a comment here. I want to make sure we represent different perspectives. Terrence says Canada is now a place that is very inviting to people like Tucker Carlson. It's not hard to find topics in a broken country run by idiots. Pretty interesting to see Alberta's premier release a video just the other day. I know that we're here pumping her YouTube channel. Maybe she'll pump ours. But she asked, is Canada broken? This is the question that conservative politicians, or for that matter, opposition politicians, want to ask you. You might find the next leader of Alberta's NDP asking, is Alberta broken? As they attempt to put their stamp on that party. You're going to say, well, Jesperson sure took a hard swerve right there. The Alberta NDP, what? We have an update for you in 60 seconds. First, I want to remind you that this episode is presented with the support of our friends at Eden Landscaping. And this is the time of year, well, yeah, their shovels are hung and all their equipment is resting in the shop. You know how that goes. There's no shovels in the ground right now. But their team is working on the planning and design stages of the next summer's projects already. Completely custom projects, all of them reflecting their clients, their customers' vision of what their outdoor space should look like. For you, whether that's a new retaining wall and a beautiful stone patio, maybe an outdoor kitchen, how about that water feature that you've always wanted? Eden wants to work with you and they're great listeners. They believe that an exceptional landscape will be a thoughtful, flowing vision that'll not only stand up over time, but lend itself to enjoyment and function as that landscape matures. You can learn more about Eden Landscaping's philosophy and see their work by checking out landscapeedmonton.ca. If you're going to be investing in the indoors of your biggest investment, that's your home, look no further than our friends at California Closets. They're providing custom closets and storage solutions for your entire home, and nobody does it better than California Closets. So whether that's the spare bedroom, you've converted it into a home office recently, but you think it could really use a Murphy bed for when mom and dad or the kids come visit, whether it's your garage finally getting organized, or of course that dream walk-in closet you've always wanted, you're going to want to check out californiaclosets.ca. You can check out some of the work they've done, see all the new trends and ideas, and request a free consultation. That's californiaclosets.ca. And for those of you that are grappling with the impact, and in some cases the real gut punch that comes with extreme weather events, if you've experienced a burst pipe, a flood, leak, frozen drains, drywall damage over the past number of days, you're going to want to get in touch with Complete Care Restoration. For more than 25 years, they've been restoring properties and rebuilding peace of mind. With professional property restoration services in Edmonton and the Metro Edmonton region, they're ready to respond 24/7, and we give them, based on our personal experience, 2 thumbs up. You can find them again online at CompleteCareRestoration.ca.
I like this comment from Jillian, which, we're not glazing over it. She says, do non-minority folks understand that this Tucker crap they find amusing is what some of us deal with on the daily? Don't think there'll be many minorities there, like paying to add to your trauma. I totally agree with that. I said he's an entertainer, and some of the shit he says is entertaining, but obviously white supremacy being a hoax, immigration, people who are immigrants being dirty, like we don't agree with that stuff, but he does it for a reason.
This is what he said back in 2019. People are talking about the white supremacy comments, and obviously the timing of it. I mean, this would be pretty offensive and quite a curious statement at any time, most especially for somebody with the size of pulpit that Tucker Carlson had. But back in 2019, this was after a white gunman had written an anti-Hispanic rant. Remember that El Paso, Texas? You know what? I mean, I'm not even trying to be snide. You may not remember the El Paso, Texas mass shooting because there's so many mass shootings in the United States, but 22 people had been murdered by an anti-Hispanic, ranting white gunman. And Carlson chimed in as President Trump was visiting El Paso, and he said to his viewers that, quote, the combined membership of every white supremacist organization in the United States, would they even be able to fit into a college football stadium? He said, I mean, seriously, this is a country where the average person is getting poorer, where the suicide rate is spiking. And then in a sort of a mocking voice, he said, yeah, white supremacy, that's the problem. He said, this is a hoax, just like the Russia hoax, he said, talking about the election. He said it's a conspiracy theory used to divide the country and keep a hold on power. That's exactly what's going on. That was Tucker Carlson on Fox News back in 2019. All right, drawing our attention very briefly to a developing story, and depending on when you hear this, it may be brand new to you or old news, but we can confirm that the Alberta NDP is holding an internal caucus meeting today, late morning, 10:30 Mountain Time on this Tuesday. Of course, this is January 16th. Now, what could the internal caucus meeting be? Well, some believe it could be Rachel Notley notifying her colleagues at the Alberta legislature that she intends to step down as leader of Alberta's NDP. Of course, this would trigger a leadership race that party loyalists hope will generate some interest in the party, sell some membership, raise some money, and infuse some energy into Alberta's official opposition. If indeed that is what they'll be discussing and the end result of this internal caucus meeting today, I don't have to tell you what we'll be talking about on Wednesday's episode of Real Talk. In the meantime, we've got other guests booked, including a big surprise. One of Canada's most noteworthy YouTubers, is set to join us tomorrow. He's built an enormous following in the province of Saskatchewan. If you think you know who it is, shoot me a note. Maybe you'll get 2 points on the Real Talk scoreboard. So QDM's going to be standing by, and if Notley doesn't announce, then we'll be going over to Saskatchewan to check in with him. If she does announce, then Wednesday's episode will all be about the future of the Alberta NDP and politics in this western province that we call home. Thanks for tuning in to Real Talk. Don't forget to tell your friends. We'll see you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson.